Good evening. And as you'll note, this is the first meeting that the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham has carried out in person since the start of the pandemic, where we moved to full emergency footing on the 13th of March, 2020. And while that seems an awful long time ago, it does feel extremely familiar to be back in this building. And it is indeed telling of the last 18 months that we haven't been here prior to that, as we've worked virtually to protect the residents of this borough from the biggest pandemic in several generations. My name is Stephen Cowan. I'm the leader of the council, and I will introduce my colleagues who are also in attendance. Then I'll explain why there are four of us in today's meeting after we've done that. Can we start on my far right, please, Adam?
Good evening, I'm Councillor Adam Connell, the Cabinet Member for Public Services Reform.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Andrew Jones, the Cabinet Member for the Economy.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Wesley Harcourt, Cabinet Member for the Environment.
No, I think it was fair to say that at the last full council meeting, there was cross-party annoyance that we're having to meet like this. As we speak, 55% roughly of Hammersmith and Fulham's population has been vaccinated, which is about 20% of England, which is common across London, as we struggle to get everyone vaccinated with the many specific challenges we have for the capital city. And that does mean, sadly, that we're deeply concerned as the Delta variant spreads rapidly throughout our city, with the rates of infection now equaling what we saw in February of this year. For that reason, we find ourselves again at odds with seeming government policy of asking people not to wear masks, asking people not to have to socially distance, and indeed encouraging an environment where we think we'll see the disease spread further, allowing new mutations and requiring adaptations to the vaccine for all of us to be topped up so that we can prepare for whatever comes next. So it is for that reason that I want to stress at the beginning of this meeting that we strongly urge people to continue to wear masks in all circumstances where they're in contact with other people outdoors. And that does mean wear a mask, it does mean stay 2 meters apart, and it does mean continue to wash your hands when you touch different surfaces. Not only will that protect you, more importantly, it will stop the virus in its tracks and thus stop what we've already seen as its ability to mutate and cause ongoing harm to residents and indeed to our economy. And that's the best way of making sure that this winter does not resemble last winter. Now, for that reason, the government has not renewed the rules on virtual meetings, and therefore we are having to meet in this format, but we have decided to take just the minimum number of cabinet members within the meeting in order to safeguard our team and also our officials who have worked around the clock protecting people during the last 18 months. And that does mean that this meeting is fully quorate and able to legally take place. All the cabinet, bar Ben Coleman, who has sent his apologies, have tuned in, and I'm looking at them on a large screen as I speak and are available to take questions. Those questions would be, or comments would be technically informal, although I think we can all take them as at face value. So welcome to a particularly unusual meeting. That said, I would now confirm by reading out which of the cabinet members we have in attendance virtually in the informal part of the meeting. And that is Councillor Sue Fenimore, our amazing Deputy Leader of the Council. Hello, Sue.
Good evening, Councillor Cowan. Just sorry for clarity as well. I believe that Councillor Smith has sent his apologies as well, just for to make sure that you're aware of that. But to say good evening, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Apologies from Councillor Schmidt. Apologies from Councillor Coleman. Councillor Culhane.
Good evening, everyone. It's Councillor Cohen, Cabinet Member for Children and Education, and apologies, I'm having some connection difficulties, which is why I've kept my video off for now.
Okay, Councillor Holder.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Sharon Holder, Cabinet Member for Strategy.
And Councillor Homan.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Homan and I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing.
Okay, that's all the Cabinet who are in attendance in reality and virtually. And then we also have in attendance Kim Smith, our hardworking Chief Executive, and Rhian Davis, the Monitoring Officer, who will both be on standby, as are many other officers who I can see have their names on the screen in front of me, ready to answer any questions. I will therefore move on to item number 1, which is minutes of a Cabinet meeting held on the 4th of May, 2021. Are there any comments on those minutes? Are those minutes agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. I will therefore sign the minutes. Okay, there we go. The apologies for absence I've already read out. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, no declarations of interest recorded. Before we move on, I would like to recognise that today is the anniversary of the foundation of our NHS by that amazing government elected in 1945. And indeed, if anyone ever doubted any aspect of the way we do healthcare in Britain, the last 18 months has done us proud when our frontline NHS workers and all of the NHS have gone into battle, keeping people safe in horrendous circumstances. I don't think I will ever forget the stories and the incidents that we dealt with over the last 18 months. But what was absolutely clear to me was the public sector led by our NHS and by our own care workers in all the different forms and all our own council officers did a remarkable job. But this is a day specifically to celebrate the NHS and to celebrate care workers. And I think we should all note that we are very proud here in the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham to do that full-throatedly and with a heart bursting with pride in their work. So happy NHS and Care Workers Day, everybody who's watching in. I move quickly on, in that case, to item number 4, which is the restoration of Hammersmith Bridge. I am happy to report that we are making some progress on Hammersmith Bridge. The report is a completely comprehensive document that sets out very clearly our desire to have the bridge fully restored and to have it restored as quickly as possible. What we want people, I think, need to note is that Hammersmith Bridge is a particularly unique bridge. It is one of the oldest suspension bridges in the world. It is just 5 years younger than the Brooklyn Bridge in America. In America, they celebrate that bridge as a historic national landmark, quite rightly so. And I know many people on the call are very fond of Brooklyn Bridge. We're more fond of Hammersmith Bridge, and yet in many ways, it has been a story of long-term problems as the bridge is often closed. And its organizational structure has often relied on different council administrations to fund it, as we have done, to the sum of £8.2 million by the end of this year, or not fund it, as has often happened in the past, most recently by our predecessors. And that has meant that not only is this one of the oldest suspension bridges in the world, it is one of the most complexly made. In fact, it was badly made, I would say, by any modern standard, because nobody would construct a bridge, a suspension bridge, that should be made out of cast iron, wrought iron, and wood to carry the types of vehicle traffic that we see today. And that did therefore make this one of the most expensive bridges in Britain to fix, putting a particular onus on the local authority that owns the bridge, technically, And indeed, as I've heard many people in TfL and the government often refer to it as an asset, I think it's hard really to see it as an asset in its current state with 141 million possible bill. So what this document does in front of us is two things. It provides a roadmap to financing the works, and it does that very clearly by saying that future administrations will struggle to find money. And indeed, whilst this administration has found a record amount, not just compared to all previous administrations, but also compared to any other council in London. Because what we should note, that is over the last 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, all of London's bridges owned by councils, road and river bridges, cost about £100 million, roughly, to be spent over a decade of spend. So that is £41 million less than we're being required to pay for Hammersmith Bridge. It gives some idea of the scale of the challenge when you think that Wandsworth Bridge has cost just over £6 million to repair. That bridge opened in 1941, I think it was. Steel cantilever bridge, fairly plain and boring design, but fully functional and therefore requiring little work. Albert Bridge cost 9.7 million, and TfL paid the majority of that, with the Royal Borough of Kensington Chelsea paying just over 2 million towards the total works. So it is quite normal that when bridges are damaged, the council will make a contribution. They will make a percentage contribution, which I've always thought was a dubious argument for us to have to make, given the scale and cost of this bridge. But they will also rely on TfL to pay the majority of the money. In 2015, the then Mayor granted 25 million towards works on Hammersmith Bridge. But since then, TfL has struggled as a consequence of the pandemic. So we are where we are, where we're presenting this paper, but anybody who has followed the saga of the bridge in recent months will know that TfL and the government agreed together to pay a third, TfL agreeing to a third on our behalf. That presents us with a possible solution to get 2/3 paid. But at the moment, the government are arguing that we would have to commit to fully paying for all full repairs of the bridge. And we're quite happy to do that because, as I said at the opening of this particular paper, that we require a toll as the way forward. And if we have the toll, then of course we can meet those costs. That said, we are still to make progress on the Memorandum of Understanding. Indeed, it's now 4 weeks since that we found out about the TfL government deal in the Evening Standard, which is a strange way to communicate to somebody. You're going to need to put up to £47 million of taxpayers' money into an asset. But that's where we found out about it. And since that time, we've been talking to government about what the Memorandum of Understanding might look like. We haven't got one from the government, which is somewhat frustrating. So to that end, we approached a team of financial and legal experts. Indeed, they've got a very good pedigree, most recently working on the Mersey Tunnel deal. And they have developed an MOU, which we submitted to government last Thursday. And hope that will be seen in the helpfulness that was intended, that we will get commitment to a toll, to an outsourced organisation that will maintain and manage the bridge, and therefore guarantee that we can fully restore the bridge and that it will be around in another 100 years or even 200 years' time for people to, in the future, to come and marvel at, as well as for people to cycle across and drive across, depending what technology there is in the future. So that's really where we're at with that. Much of this is covered in the document in front of you, and I urge you to back the document and to agree that we move forward with it. Because of the nature of this meeting, I will therefore ask the colleagues technically in the meeting, which is the Cabinet, do they have any questions or comments about this endeavour? Is there anything you want to add, Wesley, as the cabinet member responsible for the bridge?
I think, Leader, that you've summed up everything. It's been a long time and it's been a very arduous time working with TfL, working with the government and trying to make sure that we take into account the constraints that this has placed on the lives of residents, both in this borough and on those on the south of the borough. And we are keen, as much as you've already said, to get this bridge back opened as soon as we possibly can. It is a national monument. It is something that everybody recognises. It comes up every year under the boat race and such like. And it's essential that we get it back to make that link back across the Thames at this particular point. I'm sure you'll keep us updated on progress as we move forward.
Thank you for this. Thank you for that, Wesley. And can I just commend you, Wesley, because it's very easy for people not to look for problems when you get into political administration. And the fact that Wesley ordered a complete structural review of Hammersmith Bridge, having been told it was safe, but we've never checked it, is really what led us to discover the chronic problems with the bridge. And it's very easy, I think, in public life to take everything for granted when they go well and look for problems when they don't happen. But the idea of that bridge collapsing, as the several different engineers we hired all told us was likely when we initially closed the bridge in 2019 and then closed it to motor vehicles in 2020, the idea of it collapsing would have been a national calamity, and I'm absolutely confident that the measures you took in advising us to urgently review the bridge and then to check it for safety, I think has been a major way that we've protected people. So thankfully nothing bad did happen, but what a nightmare it would have been if it had. I do apologise to those residents, particularly south of the river, which is where most of the email traffic I get comes from, who are concerned about the Hammersmith Bridge. I wish we hadn't had to close it, but we had to close it for the reasons I've set out. I do think that we now have a way forward, and that way forward does require a long-term funding solution to enact the engineering solutions. And just on that, in terms of the engineering solutions, there are several options forward. The £141 million option is the option developed by TfL's team, who very kindly sent a team in. I am grateful that Cowie and Foster's, initially initiated by Sir John Ripblatt at his expense, after he wrote to everybody saying that he might be able to help, and I contacted him and said how. And I'm very grateful that he then had Sir Norman Foster's team work up a separate plan, and that is coming along very positively, opening possibilities of a quicker refurbishment and indeed a better cost to the taxpayer refurbishment. We hope to have news on that at the end of July, where we will be making recommendations. And I would just compliment the officers, Sharon and her team, Sharon Lee and her team, because in reality, when I attend the task force meetings, and there's not been one for some time now, but when I attend the task force meetings, what they started out as originally was the government saying they were coming in to fix the bridge. What was very quickly became obvious when we realized there was no solutions coming from the government, and whilst we had solutions from TfL, they were already known. What quickly became evident is all the possible solutions on funding, all the possible solutions on engineering have come from Sharon and her team. So we will have several options on which is the best and most effective way to get this bridge fixed ASAP, which we will be taking within the next month. And I fully expect to report on that once we've been able to survey extensively all the engineering advice. We're continuously bringing in different engineers to cross-check different people's work to make sure that this ancient, archaic structure, the sort of Stonehenge of bridges of Britain, is fully restored, much in the way that Stonehenge has long been preserved. So can I ask everybody then, and can I once again thank people for their patience in dealing with this, apologise for the inconvenience it's caused, and reassert that we are absolutely committed to getting this, this bridge reopened ASAP and then fully restored. Okay, right. Can I ask, is this item agreed? item is agreed. Next, we will move on to investing in our third sector. This is Councillor Fenimore's report. As she's not present in person at this meeting, she cannot introduce the report. So I am happy to formally introduce the report. But I think I would, given the hard work Sue's done on this, ask her for some comments live from her home in the north of the borough.
My sitting room. Thank you, Councillor Cowan. It has been, as we know, an extraordinarily challenging year for all our residents in Hammersmith and Fulham, and not least being supported by our third sector partners who tirelessly, as always, have done everything they can to ensure that residents are supported, particularly during this pandemic. And I am very pleased to be able to present this report to you. It's a significant investment in our third sector, demonstrating our commitment to them and their continuing work to support our residents. It's an important investment that makes significant difference to many residents. It's also a significant approach and clear demonstration of our commitment to being ruthlessly financially efficient. It's over £3 million investment in critical support for everybody who needs third sector support, from debt advice through to law advice. I'm not going to name everything because I'll miss somebody off, but I'm very pleased to be able to demonstrate here and present this report as yet more commitment to our third sector partners and the incredible work that they do.
Excellent. And I reiterate everything that Sue has just said, Councillor Fenimore has just said. We are extremely grateful to the third sector. The philosophy of this Labour administration in opposition was very much that the third sector are a vital part of the economy. And actually our view of doing things with people, not to them, was that we would find many partners in the third sector who would work with us to tackle all the worst aspects of society's ills, whether it was rough sleeping, child hunger, deprivation, youth support, whatever the issue is. We found that by developing a strong relationship with the third sector, rapidly increasing council funding, but working with partners to imaginatively come up with new solutions, we've been able to achieve some very big things in Hammersmith and Fulham on all the issues that concern the public. So thank you very much to the third sector. I'm pleased to confirm this record investment again, and indeed to make a further commitment, but we will continue to look for innovative ways for people amongst our residents and wider afield to deliver imaginative solutions. So thank you very much. Is that report agreed? Thank you. And over to Sue Fenimore again. Before I bring Sue in, I would just once again explain she's not able to formally remove a report because she is not formally here. This report, item number 6, ending modern slavery in Hammersmith and Fulham, is one of the very key priorities, and sadly, a new phenomena that has plagued our society in recent decades. There are many different aspects to modern slavery, and none of them are acceptable. And this report seeks to direct the full power of the council, our third sector partners, the police and other agencies into tackling that ill. Sue, over to you.
Thank you very much. It is nothing but shocking to know that the rise in modern slavery across the whole country continues to blight so many lives. And I hope that this report in some way demonstrates our commitment to ensure that we will not tolerate it in Hammersmith and Fulham, and give you some tangible and demonstrates some of the ways in which we will tackle it and challenge it.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from my colleagues in this meeting? Is this report agreed? Thank you very much. Next item, homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. I would say when I remember recruiting Sue Fenimore as a potential councillor, one of the things I promised her we would do is the same reason I went into politics, was that I don't think any good society has huge levels of homelessness, with people often suffering tremendous psychological problems when they're homeless, and a sign of the level of rough sleeping is, in my view, a sign of a broken society. Councillor Fenimore and Councillor Homan have both worked very effectively on that. It is fair to say we have one of the best homeless records in Britain, at times the best, and I think this will lead us even further into making sure that if you do end up on the streets, if your life crashes in such a way that you're struggling to find a safe, warm place to spend the night whilst you sleep, then we are very much on your side. That's why we have found everybody who, during the pandemic, who was rough sleeping in Hammersmith and Fulham, a safe place to stay. We have kept them in those safe places since. We have an extensive floating support of officers on the streets, meeting and coaching rough sleepers and getting them into safe abodes. And we are moving that to the next level. And I'll call on Councillor Homan, who also cannot be in this meeting, but who is the lead member for this report, to give a brief informal introduction, given I have done the formal introduction already. Councillor Homan.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan. I'm sorry I'm not able to be with you this evening. I was planning to be, but track and trace advised me I shouldn't be, so I'm sat at home this evening. It's with pleasure that I present this report. It actually hangs off of the housing strategy which we brought to Cabinet at the last meeting. This is such a big area. We have a separate homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. It builds very much on the Rough Sleeping Commission, ending rough sleeping in Hammersmith and Fulham, which we had a few years ago, and it builds on the good practice of that. What I think is very pertinent at the moment is we're obviously coming out of COVID, and so some of the extra support that we may have got from government is coming to an end. And I think the pressing thing for us is to make sure that we keep up the standards, we keep up that fantastic partnership working, both with government agencies like the Home Office, but also with our voluntary sector partners, which has helped us to actually keep our numbers really low throughout the pandemic situation. I noticed that we've had a letter from the Homelessness Minister today, which, whilst very lovely on words, praising local authorities in what they've done in terms of everyone in and keeping rough sleeping down during the pandemic, there's absolutely no promise of what support we might get from government going forward, which I think is disappointing. So I do want to recommend this evening, happy to take any questions. Also to point out that we have, as part of this report, a tenancy strategy, which again is a smaller strategy which hangs off of the overarching housing strategy. And the one thing I'd like to highlight in that is our commitment to lifetime tenancies, which is not the case for many other councils. And I would like to recommend both strategies to the Cabinet.
Okay, well, excellent, Lisa. Thank you very much for that. Any other comments or questions? In which case, is that report agreed? Agreed. Agreed it is. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Homan. I move swiftly on then to item number 8, where I move across to Councillor Harcourt, who can talk to his paper because he's here on my left-hand side. So over to you, Wesley.
Thank you, Leader. This is the report on the work of the Emergency Planning Service for the borough. The report really is about setting out the work programme for the coming year 2021, and it focuses on the lessons that we've learned in practice during the COVID-19 pandemic. Part of the ability of any organisation is its ability to respond and recover quickly from any sort of incidents, and that's part of a measure of its resilience. And building community resilience to ensure our communities are prepared and be able to deal with any sort of emergency is part of our particular work programme. This report sets out an overview of the work that was done over the last year. The major work obviously has been around the emergency response to the COVID pandemic, and seeks also to look at the lessons learned and how we'll move forward in over the coming year. I think it's quite important that we recognise the work of the emergency planning team over the last year, which has kept on so much to keep us as safe as possible during the pandemic. And also, one of the key lessons that we've learned is from that team working with various agencies across the borough and with other boroughs across West London. And it's helped us for future planning in terms of should there be another emergency, be it another pandemic like COVID or any other form of emergency, such as the ones we've had to deal with in the past, like Grenfell or the Parsons Green bomb and such like, not to mention any more. There's various appendices here which set out the various aspects of the work plan and the various arrangements for everybody to see. I would like to say once again, thank you very much to that emergency planning team for all the work they've done over the last year. It's been absolutely intense, 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day at certain times of the year. So thank you to all of them.
Thanks very much, Wesley. Are there any questions from our colleagues? All right, is that item agreed? Agreed it is, in which case we move on to item number 9, procurement procurement strategy for waste collection, recycling and street cleaning services. Over to you, Councillor Harcourt.
Thank you again. This report sets out the proposed procurement strategy to competitively tender the contract to deliver street cleaning and waste collection services from the 30th of January 2023. The current contract with Serco has been in place since 2008. It was extended in 2014 to run to June 2021 and further extended to the end of January 2023. This sets out the proposed methodologies that will be used and the length of time of the new contract to fall in line with the disposal agreement that we have with Western Riverside Waste Authority, who we are under statutory duty to deliver waste to. There's also various options in there for an extension and also for break clauses after a period of 4 years throughout. I think that's as much as I need to say on this.
Are there any questions? Councillor Connell.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harcourt, for giving an overview there. Just wondered if you could please outline some of the environmental benefits that we'll see from this procurement exercise in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that. Obviously, we are in the middle of a climate emergency, and we as a borough declared a climate emergency and ecological emergency back in 2019. And one of the key areas about any climate emergency is about reducing waste. So part of this will be about reducing waste. It's also looking at how do we collect that waste. So part of the issue will be a change from the current heavy-duty diesel collection vehicles to an electric fleet and such like. We'll be looking also to how do we recycle more and reuse more. Those are key issues around reducing the damage to the climate. Part of the mayor's requirements are that we start looking at and make food collections. And it's not just the London mayor who's doing that. The government is already out to consultation on there being a need for weekly food collection. So that's something we're going to have to look at as well. And given the volume of food that goes to waste, one of the key issues that's come out of that with the boroughs that I've spoken to who do food collections is that people start realizing just how much they're actually wasting, when in fact food that they're wasting could well be used by people who are less well off. So we're doing all of these sort of things to improve the not improve it, but to react to the climate emergency. That's in brief.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Is that anything else? In which case, is item number 9 approved?
Yeah.
Okay, agreed it is. So that item is agreed. We move swiftly on to item number 10, the Education City Land Appropriation. Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Leader. And in fact, item 10 and item 11 are about the same thing, although different components. So I just wanted to say a few words about the Ed City and White City Central development on this item, but it also applies to the next. This is a very significant scheme. We have been put together in the White City estate across 3 sites, which is going to deliver a substantial improvement for residents across the White City and across the borough over 3 areas of land around the White City estate. It includes a new primary school, a new nursery, new adult education facility, affordable office space, offices for educational charities, and perhaps also very significantly, a large number, 132 on this site, of genuinely affordable homes. Overall, the scheme will deliver 300 generally affordable homes and some additional housing as well. The scheme, I think, is related to our industrial strategy in terms of bringing high quality education to all the residents of our borough, and an area of significant regeneration around the White City Estates facilities across all age groups, of course, from nursery, primary to adult education. So a very significant development. I thoroughly endorse this to the Cabinet, and we will see this developed over a number of years and adding a significant number of genuinely affordable homes, given the scale of the housing crisis we continue to face.
Any questions? Councillor Connell?
Thank you. So just a quick comment from me. I remember when we first took EdCity to the planning committee several years ago, and I happened to chair the planning committee at the time. And I recall the planning officer who had worked on the report that went to the planning committee described it as the most exciting planning application he'd worked on in his entire career, because of the amount of benefit that this scheme will have, both in terms of providing genuinely affordable homes and investing in the futures of young people and the White City Estate and beyond. So I just wanted to thoroughly welcome and recommend the two reports tonight.
Just to respond to that, Councillor Connell, I'd also add, and was going to mention on the next item, but will now, part of this, a key element is our new youth zone. There has been enormous pressure over the last decade on facilities for young people, and obviously the pandemic has really exacerbated that challenge. The youth zone is more than a youth centre. It's a sector-leading young facility for young people in the borough, which will offer them a whole range of opportunities and development chances. So a very integrated package with the youth zone, the primary school, the nursery, adult education and housing. So as you said, I think planners have felt, and I've heard this from a number of colleagues, and I should thank the colleagues, the officer colleagues in the council who have worked so hard on this for a number of years. Really, it's a leading development scheme, which I think many boroughs across London and others around the country will look to as an example of one of the best forms of practice in this area.
Okay, can I thank you, Councillor Jones, for your leadership on this issue? And I know when we were in opposition, we spent much time talking about what we would do to give people the best possible chances and the best possible jobs and business and science opportunities around. And at the heart of that is our industrial strategy, the first of its kind with any academic institution in the UK, but one that's completely geared towards turning Hammersmith and Fulham into a global economic hotspot by attracting the smartest businesses in STEM industries, an area where Imperial is predominant at a global level, and building on our heritage as a media hotspot already with the BBC, Disney, UK TV, Endemol, and many others recently joined by ITV at White City. So the opportunities that we have here are abounding. And just in the 5 years since we've launched our industrial strategy, we can see the huge levels of economic growth, the numbers of startups in those very important STEM areas that are contributing to climate, fighting climate change, and also contributing to, indeed, tackling the COVID pandemic. But the question often in Western societies when economic growth, certainly those with Anglo-Saxon economic models, is that people get left behind. And so the idea that we invest in the White City, which is right on the doorstep of this economic growth, and we invest in young people, not just in their education, but also in their their after-school education, that gives them the aspiration, lets them meet the entrepreneurs, lets them take part in youth activities, but set them on a course, then that's exactly what this Education City scheme is about. And it is a very important building block, we think, of the strategy of the administration, but we also think in turning this borough into a place where you can shoot for the stars And if you're the luckiest person in the world, you will be born and grow up in Hammersmith and Fulham. And that's the aim, is to make sure that that remains true for decades to come and is truer and truer as the scale of our ambition gets bigger and bigger. So thank you very much for that, Councillor Jones, for that leadership on that. It's a very important moment, but we've been able to find the money to sign this off and to get these things done. Is that agreed? Thank you. Right. We move on and we're making good progress, I think, to the item number 11, the final big paper. Again, investing in White City is the name of it. And again, Councillor Jones.
Well, as I said, this is the second element of the two. So we have discussed that this paper sets out in detail the different elements and how they are distributed across the 3 sites in White City. So I'm not going to say more because we've talked about it, but it's the second component of the 2 papers we have on the Ed City and White City Central development.
You certainly have. Is this paper agreed? Right. Agreed it is then. So thank you very much. That brings us to the close of the main items. I move on to item 12, a forward plan of key decisions. Please note those. Are they noted? Thank you. And 13, please note that as there are no exempt items. And therefore, I close the meeting. Thank you very much for tuning in, if that's what you've done. Thank you very much for taking part, if you're at home and you have a cabinet or an officer. And thank you to the cabinet who've turned out tonight. It's been nice to see you all. Good night.